case you missed it, 2 weeks ago, the Pokémon Company just released a new mobile puzzle game called Pokémon Friends, in which you detangle yarn to make Pokémon plush. It is fantastic. If you're new here, I'm Katzer, and I have been crocheting life-size Pokémon for a few years now. And in addition to being an enthusiast of both yarn and Pokémon plush, I also happen to be a complete sucker for mobile puzzle games. So it kind of felt like Pokémon Friends was made specifically with me in mind. And I need to talk about it. And specifically what I would love to talk about for today is the design choices of the plush themselves. So I watched Pokémon Presents, I saw the reveal trailer along with everybody else. I always get pretty excited when I see any Pokemon game lets us collect plush, and in this case they look crocheted. That's like 1,000% more exciting. And then they showed a close-up of the plush. And let me just start off by saying that none of what I'm about to say is intended as criticism or nitpicking of these design choices, just more like a glimpse into my brain and the way it processes things, as well as what I find to be a fascinating glimpse into the design process of these types of games. Because here's my take. As obvious of a choice as it seems, these plush are not crocheted. Definitely not. So if we take a close look at any of these plush, you can see it's very obviously, very deliberately shown to have a fiber strand texture. That being said, it's not patterned at all like a crochet stitch. It's not even patterned like a knit stitch. It's a cross weave. It's just strands woven across each other like you would find a lot of fabrics are made, but just with a very large strand. We can also see the exact kind of seams that you would expect to see on any sewn plush. And while you will see seams often to attach limbs or attach ears to a head on an amigurumi plush, because those pieces are often constructed separately and sewn on, I can't imagine any crocheter making a shape like these ears by making two separate pieces and then stitching them together, instead of just working in the round, which is classically, traditionally defining of what amigurumi is. It's something that you crochet worked in the round. So, for all of these presented reasons, I hereby conclude that the Plush-O-Matic is not crocheting or even knitting with the yarn that we put in. It is in fact weaving a cloth out of those strands of yarn that it then cuts into pattern pieces and sews together to create a plushie. So, did I think way too deep into a cute game that just wanted to give me a cute collectible? Sure I did, but this is who I am. This is what years of crocheting and analyzing Pokemon content has made me. What I find most fascinating, though, is now asking, why? Why was this the design choice that they settled on? The first obvious choice anytime you're trying to look into the motivation behind a corporate design choice is, that it was easier or cheaper or faster. Some kind of convenience excuse, right? And for what it's worth, I have dabbled in trying to create the crochet texture digitally. In my case, I made a custom brush in Procreate for illustrations, and I am quite an amateur, but the point is that it was tricky. Getting it to look realistic, getting the stitches the exact size you want, lining up the orientation of those stitches to where they would appear on an amigurumi, as well as the fact that the patterns will look different between a sewn plush and an amigurumi. And the Pokemon Company has a extensive library of Pokemon plush that they have designed and manufactured over the years, really for every single Pokemon. But they would have had to hire or consult a crocheter to create every single plush they wanted to put into this game if they were going to accurately represent how a crocheted plush would be patterned. That being said, I do think it would be a lot easier to capture that crochet aesthetic on a 3D model rather than a 2D image like I was trying to do, as well as the fact that this is the Pokemon Company. They have way more talented people on their team, they have way more experienced people, they have better resources, they have all of the time and resources to add crocheters to the team if that's what they had wanted. So personally, I think something else was probably the main factor here. Aesthetically, if you have no personal investment in something specifically being crocheted, these plush look amazing. They look fantastic, so cute. And these types of seams and stitches that I'm talking about just so iconically scream plush, right? That's how you know it's not a Pokemon you're looking at, it's a Pokemon plush that you're looking at. It's kind of like having buttons for eyes, like it just tells you what you need to know about that entity. And this is something that you don't necessarily get quite the same way from an amigurumi design. In fact, without having these types of seams that are so customary to a plush, it might have felt kind of intuitively off or inaccurate to any players who weren't crocheters, which is probably the majority of players, if they had chosen a more faithful crochet design. So while yarn as a mechanic is a really cute and fun idea to build into the concept of the game, a traditional looking plush ultimately makes a better collectible than the way you would use yarn to make a plush in real life. And ultimately, you're also not supposed to think about it this hard. So hey, at the end of the day, I think this is a really fun concept for a game. I still love it. I have been playing it every day. But you know what? Here's a little perspective from full-time crocheter that, a lot of people might not think about these things the way I do. And maybe other people would find it interesting. 'Cause I do. As I said, this was kind of a glimpse into my brain and how I process. A lot of people saw a fun game. Immediately, my wheels started churning about how does that plush-o-matic work? What is the mechanism? How is it using that yarn? What is it spitting at? There were a lot of questions. So I wanted to talk about the game. I may have some follow-up thoughts going forward about some of the specific plush that I found most interesting. I would love to play the full version of the game and see all of the extra plush and puzzles that are in the expansion pack. So, if anybody from Pokemon happens to be seeing this, hit me up with that partnership offer. But, either way, I'm going to be playing every day. I'm going to be talking about this. I'm going to make some shorts probably about some of my follow-up thoughts. And if you enjoy listening to the deep processing of someone way too invested in Pokemon and the things that they release, there is more of that on this channel. You've found the place where you belong. So subscribe if you want to see more, if you want to hear more of these thoughts. If you had any thoughts yourself about any of these design choices, drop those in the comments. Let's discuss. But until next time, thanks for tuning in.